Ladies and gentlemen, the CTDF Fantasy Football Show is on the air once again. I know what you're saying. You're saying a fantasy football show in March. Well, what's going on right now in the NFL is a free agent frenzy, and we got so much to talk about here. And here to help me sort it all out, the host of Hooked on Sports, which you can hear on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere you can hear podcasts. My good buddy John Flynn. Flynn, how are you, buddy?
What's up, Tim, and happy new league year.
Yeah, happy new league year to you. The new league year has just started here in about, I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago.
So that the free agent that the league year started yesterday, so it was
Ah,
about 24 to 36 hours ago. But a lot of things that went on the last few days. A lot of league changing acquisitions and transactions, and we got a lot to get to tonight, Tim.
oh, absolutely, buddy. Just remember, hope all y'all are safe out there. Remember, wash your hands, use social distractions or social distancing is what I call it, because this thing is getting serious. So I'm here saving my place. I know Flynn's saving his place.
Hmm.
So, like I said, we got so much to talk about. This our first fantasy football show of the new league year, and there's so many things to talk about, but I think we should go ahead and get started with the GOAT, the greatest quarterback of all time. It's the end of an era, an era in which we probably will never, ever see the likes of ever again. It looks like Tom Brady has now departed from the New England Patriots after 20 years, as he is expected to sign with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I can see that. I mean, their quarterback, Jameis Winston, has pretty much led the league in interceptions for, I think, the last 2 seasons. So, Flynn, Brady, good fit?
So funny you say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because when I talked about Tom Brady on Hooked on Sports after Championship Sunday and about a couple weeks ago when we were diving into free agency, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers weren't even considered on my list. The teams that were considered on my list were the Tennessee Titans, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the LA Chargers, and for all the reasons about that. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers checked off five big things. One, he gets paid $30 million a year, which he's going to. Number two, be part of a roster that can win now with him. Number three, be an integral part in the game planning process. Number four, play in a warm weather city. Tampa is such that. And number five, to play along the East Coast and be as close to the East Coast as possible, so he can have his connections with New York City and be able to travel freely when football activities are necessary. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tim, checked off all five boxes, and that's why. Yeah, he is the ex quarterback of the New England Patriots and is the newest quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a league changing move. This changes the AFC picture. This changes the NFC picture.
Yeah, I would say this is probably a huge shift, like when the continents were shifting out of place. Like we study in world history. How it was all one big landmass and then it broke off. This this is actually very huge, very huge. So so Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. I say maybe set the over under for wins for Tampa Bay. Probably maybe 9 or 10.
I'd say so. And again, it's not official yet because they still have to agree to a couple of things. But the one thing I haven't seen yet is number of years. That'll be part of the contract, but but he said he wants to play 2 more years, so you got to figure it's going to be a 2-year deal, $30 million a year. But when you look at how the NFC South shapes up, Tim, that obviously Carolina's rebuilding with they brought in Matt Rule as head coach, and he's going to shake up the culture there. So you have the Falcons, who haven't been playing the part the last couple of years, and you have the Saints, who did bring back Drew Brees on a 2-year deal. Drew Brees isn't as strong of an athlete as he was in years past. So I really think, Tim, the door is wide open for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the division and be on that same boat with San Francisco and Dallas and Green Bay as teams that can go to the Super Bowl this year.
So, do you see the Patriots actually missing the playoffs this year?
That said, the thing is, Andy Dalton is still available in free agency, so and I could see the Patriots going ahead and signing Andy Dalton, and Andy Dalton had a really bad roster around him the last couple of years in Cincinnati, and granted, he'll have a defense that's been elite with the Patriots, and we chronicled how historically good the Patriots were defensively last year, and it looks like they'll be bringing the vast majority of their pieces. They did lose Jamie Collins to the Lions, but I think if the Patriots bring in Andy Dalton, I think Bill Belichick can find a way to get the Patriots back into the playoffs.
Interesting.
But they're going to be nowhere near the level they were with Tom Brady.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's almost take the heart right out of New England when you took Tom Brady out of there. But of course, as you said, it's not been official. He's not officially a Buccaneer just yet, but he is expected to sign with them. I'm sure ESPN and all those markets will keep us posted on that. Next here on the list here, very interesting. This is something that Flynn and I talked about right before we went on the air. The Houston Texans and the Arizona Cardinals have traded to one of their best players to the other team. DeAndre Hopkins, great receiver for the Texans, now going to Arizona. Arizona is giving David Johnson to the Texans. Now, Flynn, tell everyone why this is so interesting.
So I don't know. This was like a 1 in 100 scenario, and there might have been other people out there that did the same thing back in August and September for the fantasy football drafts. But my first two picks in our CTDF fantasy football draft last year, my first pick was DeAndre Hopkins. My second pick was David Johnson, and they were just traded for each other. So that I found quite interesting. And like when I was watching ESPN NFL Network coverage and I saw the name DeAndre Hopkins, I went like, "Huh? DeAndre Hopkins? Wow!"
Hmm. Well, so do you see Houston maybe doing better than Arizona or what do you think?
The Houston Texans are going nowhere, Tim. And ever since Bill O'Brien took over as the head coach, and we all thought it was a good hire because of what he was able to do with Penn State and maximize the talent of some guys over there. But I mean, the big mistake that really triggered everything else with the Texans was, remember when the Broncos won the Super Bowl and Brock Osweiler hit free agency and the Texans signed him to a ridiculous 4-year deal worth $72 million. This was just mistake after mistake after mistake that the Texans dealt themselves into because they bought into a shotgun marriage with Brock Osweiler, and it only lasted a year. He got traded over to Cleveland. The um the Texans got some picks in return, but and the Texans went on to draft Deshaun Watson, but even with those draft picks that the Texans kept missing on pieces that were vital to the rest of the team's success, particular offensive line help, secondary help, and they really couldn't hit on those, and because they couldn't hit on those, and the Houston had to use their first round pick last season to reach for an offensive lineman that many scouts and draft analysts believed he would go in the third or fourth round, and that really scared me if I were the Houston Texans, and because those concerns were so grave that the Texans decided to bolster their offensive line by getting Laramie Tunsil from the Miami Dolphins, and also got Kenny Stills, who I think. But first of all, Larry Tunsil, I think, is worth every single penny. He is an outstanding left tackle, and he paid dividends immediately for Deshaun Watson. But the Texans gave up 2 first-round picks. That they don't have a first-round pick this year. They don't have a first-round pick next year. So what does Bill O'Brien do to try to get draft capital? It's one thing to get draft capital, but trading DeAndre Hopkins, first team All Pro wide receiver the last 2 years, for David Johnson, who is washed up and is overpaid and overpriced, and only a second round pick in return, and then a fourth next year. I mean, really, really, Bill O'Brien has absolutely no idea what the hell he's doing as a general manager of the Houston Texans, and this no general manager stuff is the reason why I've been nagging on the Houston Texans the last couple of years, and a lot of the planning with strategy is about plan. The Houston Texans have no plan.
I think I'm going to set the over under for Houston winning games this year. Probably 4.
Four is a little bit too much because again they still have Will Fuller, they have Kenny Stills. I think that's not a bad duo for a wide receiver, but it's not the one that gives said team the best chance to win. They still have Deshaun Watson, who has proven he can carry a team on his back, but that task is going to be a lot harder without DeAndre Hopkins. I think this is a 6 to 7 win team in an AFC South.
Interesting. 6 to 7 wins. We'll see how that works out. We were just talking about the Houston Texans. Let's stay in the AFC South. I thought he was going to retire at the end of this year, but nope. It looks like former Chargers quarterback Philip Rivers is going to the Indianapolis Colts. I've heard a lot of people say that this is a good fit for him. Do you think he really has anything left?
I think he does because I think if you watch the games last year with the Chargers, and I picked the Chargers preseason to win the Super Bowl because of all the intangibles needed, great pass rush, strong secondary, Phil Rivers wanting with that story with the wide receivers, but the Chargers didn't have an offensive line last year, and the Chargers were decimated with injuries to their wide receiver position. Melvin Gordon held out the first couple months of the first couple weeks of the season. He got no satisfaction, and his results dwindled as a result with the emergence of Austin Eckler. But you go from a team from the Chargers, Tim, to a team like the Indianapolis Colts, who have a powerful offensive line with All Pro Quentin Nelson, the Notre Dame guy, as the left tackle, and you have a tremendous depth on the offensive line, the defensive line. I think Phil Rivers is going to be a a good fit because I think the Colts, now we know the Colts are going to go wide receiver in the first round, and I think this is a sensational wide receiver class in the draft, and I think Phil Rivers will have an extra toy to play with alongside Eric Ebron and T.Y. Hilton. I think the Colts had a pretty good week this week with adding Philip Rivers. I think the Colts are going to be contenders this year.
Yeah, I can see them probably finishing either first or second in the division this year. Because speaking of that same division, AFC South, the Tennessee Titans have decided to put the franchise tag on their stud running back Derrick Henry, and they decided to give a contract extension to Ryan Tannehill. And I gotta say, Ryan Tannehill was one of the best comeback stories of last year. How do you see Tennessee? I think I see them finishing first place in their division.
It's funny. I don't think we'd go so fast in terms of Tennessee finishing the top of the division because you saw the Ryan Tannehill with the Dolphins, and at times he was good, at times he wasn't. But when you take into account the way Mike Vrabel and the offensive staff equipped him for success with guys like A.J. Brown and Corey Davis and Delaney Walker, who's no longer with the team after the team released him. But I think that there's going to be a huge question to be asked. I think the biggest question, and I don't think it's about Derrick Henry anymore. And we know he's a sensational talent. I've been touting him all year. He rightfully was first team All Pro last season, but will we see the Ryan Tannehill who was inconsistent for 7 seasons with the Dolphins, or are we going to see the one that took the Tennessee Titans all the way to Championship Sunday? That's the biggest question. But in terms of how they distributed the contract, and this offseason was a little bit different, and the Cowboys and the Titans were the two teams most affected by this year. That previously you could put a franchise tag and a transition tag for both, but you can only do one or the other. So we're going to talk about the Cowboys situation in a little bit, but the Titans franchise tag Derrick Henry, and as much as I feel bad for Derrick Henry, I think that's the right thing to do. But I would have considered the Tennessee going after Tom Brady because of the connection Mike Vrabel had and the infamous FaceTime they had that Brady and Vrabel had when he was at the Syracuse basketball game a couple weeks ago. So, but let's give Ryan Tannehill a chance. So with a legitimate team in a full season, we're gonna give him a chance.
We'll give them a chance there. I can see, like I said, I can see Tennessee and Indianapolis fighting for the top spot in that division. Uh,
I,
I
I,
think
Again, barring dramatic injuries, I think Indianapolis and Tennessee are the two best teams in the AFC South, bar none.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Well, well, you just mentioned this, so why don't we go ahead and talk about it? Let's talk about America's team, the Dallas Cowboys.
And I definitely want to hear your take about this one, with you being a Cowboys fan.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Well, excuse me. So last year, Zeke Elliott got his big contract. So this year, they decided to give Amari Cooper a 5 year, $100 million contract, and they decided to give the franchise tag to Dak Prescott. I was watching First Take the day after this happened, and I agree with Stephen A. Smith. If I were Dak Prescott, I would feel extremely insulted. Now, Flynn, am I wrong for saying that?
Weren't we talking all of last year, Tim, about Dak getting the long-term contract and Amari Cooper getting franchise tag? We were talking for weeks, for months about Amari Cooper guys getting the franchise tag, and Dallas is going to draft a wide receiver in the first round of the draft or somewhere along those lines. But it was Dak getting the franchise tag, and let's clear things out. And I think Amari Cooper is worth every single penny. I think he is a sensational talent. He single handedly changed the complexion of the Cowboy offense upon his survival, and he is about as important uh, uh to the success of the Dallas Cowboys as anybody on the roster, whether it's him, Zeke Elliott, or Dak Prescott. So, but I think I think Jerry Jones slapping the exclusive franchise tag on him means that there's still a hole or two that needs to be clarified in the relationship between Dak and his agents and Jerry Jones and the front office of the Cowboys.
Mhm. And speaking of the Cowboys, they gave a 3-year contract to. Well, he was the backup tight end. Now it looks like he's going to be the starting tight end. Blake Jarwin, 3-year contract with him. They release one. They released Robert Quinn, who led the Cowboys last year in sacks. They released Byron Jones, but the Cowboys did get another pass rusher, Gerald McCoy. Your thoughts on that?
I think I think Robert Quinn was going to cost a ton of money for Dallas to retain all of them, and we knew that the Cowboys were going to lose a lot some talent some way or another in free agency, but and Robert Quinn was going to cost too much money in order for them to do the things they wanted to do with Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott, and it's all part of the roster management. But I think they did a pretty good job with getting the defense to a float, and I think the defense will get have some personnel issues in training camp, and I think it's going to be up to Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys to solve all those issues before week 1. But I think the Cowboys had a pretty good week this week.
Yeah, I guess take a little bit of the good, a little bit of the bad. I guess. I mean, that's how the business of football goes sometimes. But I see where you came with a good week with the Cowboys here. And I mentioned that Blake Jarwin is going to be the starting tight end because our tight end, who I thought was going to retire, just like I thought Philip Rivers was going to retire, Jason Witten is now heading to Las Vegas. Not only him, but now since Tannehill got the contract, the former Heisman Trophy winner, the former second pick overall in the 2015 draft, Marcus Mariota, they're both heading to Las Vegas to play for the Silver and Black. Your thoughts?
And I think I'm very interested in seeing how John Gruden would be able to fix Marcus Mariota. But again, Mariota is going to be the backup to Derek Carr. Let's make that crystal clear before anything barring anything happens with Derek Carr, and we've already seen the relationship between John Gruden and Derek Carr have some bumps on the road, and there's been times of confusion between the two. But in this instance, Mariota's going to be the backup. But I think Mariota's going to have to live with this reality the rest of his career that he's not going to be an instant starting quarterback. That he's going to have to prove to other to prove to the Raiders and prove to the rest of the league that he can be a starting quarterback caliber, and I think John Gruden is one of the coaches that can help him on that.
All right. Now, your thoughts on Jason Witten heading to Vegas?
I think with the lack of tight ends in the draft, I think that there could be a couple of good ones a couple of good ones that I saw in the scouting combine a couple of weeks ago. So, but I just I think Jason Witten had better fits with what the Raiders are going through, but I'm gonna give Jason Witten another chance. But it doesn't seem right seeing Jason Witten not in a Dallas Cowboy uniform.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's hard when you play for a team for what you did. What was it, 16 years?
It's
Uh,
15 years, and then he took the year off to do Monday Night Football on ESPN with Jill Tessitore and Booger McFarland.
and then he came back to the Cowboys this past year for his 16th year. Like I thought he was going to retire, but going to Las Vegas. But who knows?
But the thing we do know about the Raiders, and like last year, my expectations with the Raiders were so low because of how poor their defense was going to be. But I think one of the biggest storylines that people are not going to be talking about is that the Vegas Raiders overhauled their linebacking core overnight. They got Corey Nassib from Tampa Bay. They got Nick Kwiatkowski from the Bears, and they got Corey Littleton from the Rams. All of them on 3-year contracts, and I think the Raiders finally have legitimate linebacking core that's about as deep as any in the NFL. And not a lot of people are going to talk about that.
That could be a very quiet story. Maybe they could be maybe an underrated linebacking core, but they could do a very good job there. So it'll be interesting to see what
Yeah.
happens there.
And the Raiders have 2 first-round picks this year because of the Khalil Mack trade a couple years ago.
Oh yes, when they traded Khalil Mack to the
Yeah,
Chicago Bears.
yeah, and there's going to be a lot of talent for the Raiders at positions that need this year. So I think the Raiders, John Gruden, I think they're licking their and Mike Mayock, I think they're licking their chops this year.
And speaking of the Chicago Bears, they are about to get former Eagles and Jaguars quarterback Nick Foles. Now, I'd say Mitchell Trubisky was a slightly above average quarterback in my opinion, but I think Nick Foles could probably do a little bit better.
Okay, I mean, and Will talked about this on podcast. I think Natalie talked about this. So, but it was pretty clear mid-season that Mitchell Trubisky is not the answer for the Chicago Bears. And remember the Bears 3 years ago they started with the number 3 pick. They moved up one spot, number 2, and gave some draft picks to get Mitchell Trubisky. And Mitchell Trubisky has not lived up to that number 2 and number 2 overall pick status. And he's been terrible. Matt Nagy's been terrible. Ryan Pace has been overmatched as a general manager. I think the Bears were one of the teams that I thought were one of the losers that. They get washed up tight end Jimmy Graham on a 2-year deal. They signed Robert Quinn to a 5-year deal, but the 5-year $70 million deal, that's a ton of money to spend on a slightly above average a pass rusher, and then they go ahead and trade a 4th-round pick for Nick Foles, and Nick Foles outside of those two hot streaks with the Philadelphia Eagles, first when he replaced Mike Vick in 2013, and then when he replaced Carson Wentz after the ACL injury in 2017 and led the Eagles to a championship. That he's been a mediocre at best quarterback, and the reality of the Bears fans is that Ryan Pace is going to stay, Matt Nagy is going to stay, and Mitchell Trubisky is going to stay. Matt Nagy is probably going to start Mitchell Trubisky week number 1. But if I were Matt Nagy, Nick Foles would absolutely be my starter for week number 1. And the Bears have no idea what they're doing. They are and their strategy this offseason has been a pathetic punchline.
Yeah, I would go ahead. I would choose Foles over Trubisky right now. I mean, just right now.
Matt Nagy's not going to say that.
No, he's not going to say that. But we'll just see what happens. And speaking of Philadelphia, uh, Darius Slay has been traded to the Eagles. I don't really know much about him. Can you fill me in?
So Darius Slay, he is one of the up and rising stars in the cornerback position of the NFL. So the cornerback market this year in free agency was interesting because you had Byron Jones as the best of them all, and then you had James Bradbury, and then you had a couple of others as well. That the Cowboys the Byron Jones signed with the Dolphins while James Bradbury signed with the division rival New York Giants, and the Giants, Eagles, and Redskins were all in on James Bradbury, and I thought Bradbury would go to Washington and rejoin Ron Rivera there. But Harry Roseman made a pitch, but then Dave Gettleman came in and swooped him up, and the Giants get a corner that really provides the veteran experience that they need in the secondary, especially with Antoine Bethea being released, so they can have more cap room. But and so the Eagles' issues with their secondary have been chronicled the last couple of years, and was a big reason why the Eagles haven't seen Championship Sunday since their Super Bowl run, and they've been heavily relying on Jalen Mills, but Jalen Mills has been up and down with injuries. The entire secondary at one point a couple years ago was down with injuries, but now Jalen Mills can be a cornerback too, which I think suits him well. And Darius Slay, who was one of the 10 best, who was one of the 5 to 10 best corners in the game, I think is going to immensely help that Philadelphia secondary.
That'd be an interesting move right there.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Eagles only gave up a third and fifth round pick for him, and which I thought was surprising. But when you think about how the Lions wanted to trade him after signing former Falcons corner Desmond Trufant, that Darius Slay had been asking for a trade for quite some time, and the Lions weren't able to get much back in return.
Very interesting there. You mentioned the Falcons. I thought I heard that the Falcons released a big name this week.
I talking about Trufant, who signed
I
with the
want to
Lions.
say, I want to say Devontae.
The
What was
Devontae
it?
Freeman.
I think that's what I saw. I may have to research that, but it was I was like it was like a big name for Atlanta. But
Devontae Freeman was released, yes, and he is available.
Devontae Freeman is available. Hey Jerry, Jerry,
So
this guy's pretty good.
it's a the Cowboys already have $15 to $20 million a year invested in Zeke already, and you're not going to get much you're not going to get much running back help beside him.
Sure. I mean they got Well, I'm pretty sure they still got Tony Pollard to back up Zeke. He was good in some situations, like on third downs, so that may work. But we'll see where Freeman goes.
I'd say, but a realistic team, and there have been some reports around there that Devontae Freeman may wind up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to play alongside Brady there.
Interesting. That sounds like a tasty little dish out there. Brady to Freeman.
But Devontae Freeman is not the same player as he was earlier in his career, Tim. So he's not going to get much money.
Probably won't get much. We'll see how that works out. And speaking of the NFC South, Teddy Bridgewater, he did very well in Drew Brees' absence in a couple of games this year. He is now going to the Carolina Panthers. So does this mean that Cam's out the door?
So Cam Newton is out the door. The Panthers are trying to work tirelessly to trade Cam Newton they can get some draft picks in return. But teams that have been linked to Cam Newton are the L.A. Chargers and the New England Patriots. But I don't know if he'll be best suited for New England with Bill Belichick, but it's not going to be easy. Given that the Colts landed a quarterback, that Indianapolis landed a quarterback. I don't think Jacksonville is in a win now mode for Cam Newton, but I think the Panthers are not going to have an easy time trading him though.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult right there. So, looking at this list here, I got anything else as far as free agents? Because I don't have anything on my end.
Yeah, and I talked about a lot of these things on Hooked on Sports today. Uh, what I also talked about, so I had Brady to Tampa, DeAndre Hopkins getting traded to Arizona, the Dallas, Tennessee, Darius Slay, Bridgewater, Phil Rivers, Nick Foles, Cam Newton, the Raiders. So like other teams that I thought that did well and didn't do well, but I think the team that I think really hit the nail on the head in terms of the offseason so far. I think the Baltimore Ravens got better, and one of the big reasons the Baltimore Ravens lost to the Tennessee Titans in the divisional round last year was they couldn't generate a pass rush of any sort. So what do? They trade for Calais Campbell, who was in the Pro Bowl each of the last 3 years representing the Jaguars, and then they go get Michael Brockers, who was considered the second best of the pass rushers for the LA Rams, playing alongside Aaron Donald. The Baltimore now has generated a legitimate pass rush that can get to the quarterback endlessly, and I think because of that, Baltimore is back in the conversation for the Super Bowl.
I just remembered a couple more players that got released. Speaking of the LA Rams, Todd Gurley
And Clay Matthews too.
and Matthews.
Yeah. That announcement was made about an hour or so after Gurley got released. But the thing about Tim and Colin Cowherd mentioned this about a couple times during the NFL season that but now it's here that the release of Todd Gurley is bad news for running backs who want to get paid 15-20 million dollars a year. That saying that if you don't perform to your expectations on a lucrative contract for a running back, chances are you're not going to play the entire length of the contract. And Todd Gurley learned the hard way. The Rams extended Gurley a year too early. That it would have been better off if he pursued opportunities elsewhere. But this is a signal that running backs, you better play well, or you put up.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to see if anyone will pick up Gurley, but I don't know how much they're going to be willing to spend on him. It ain't going to be no king's ransom, it ain't going to be, but I still think Gurley is a very talented running back. I'm sure he could fit somewhere.
And the
And
thing, and did you see the tweet? So there was a tweet that Todd Gurley put out earlier this afternoon, and I commented on this, and he said, "Damn, I got fired on my day off." Hashtag quarantine and chill. And the first impression I got is I don't think this is a good outlook of Gurley for teams that are interested in improving at the running back position. And I don't know if Gurley is ever going to be a prominent NFL running back again. I really don't. I don't know.
interesting. And I heard, I think it was either earlier today or it was yesterday, Denver Broncos have let go of Joe Flacco.
It was an awful trade at the time. John Elway had no idea what he was talking about. He thought Flacco was going to be the savior, and obviously, when you watch the games in Baltimore the last couple of years, he wasn't. And the Broncos paid the price because of that. It was good for the Broncos to right a wrong there.
Actually, to tell you the truth, I thought Flacco did worse in this year than he did in both of the last 2 years in Baltimore.
Which brings up my point that John Elway had no idea what he was talking about.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. All due respect, I love John Elway, one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time. But something in his mind is just not clicking right.
Yeah, and he was bailed out his first few years with the Broncos by Peyton Manning, but then after that with with Chase Daniel, Case Keenum, Flacco, that he really hasn't hit the ball on something. But I saw a couple of things last season from Drew Lock, who was their second round pick last year from Missouri. I think he showed me something, and I think if Vic Fangio was smart, he'd be the starting quarterback week number one next season.
Very interesting here. You got anything else? Cause I don't have anything else here.
And so like other teams. Oh, so here's a trade that we missed. Stephon Diggs getting traded from Minnesota to the Buffalo Bills. So Stephon Diggs got traded to Buffalo,
Ooh.
and the Vikings got the Bills' first, fifth, and sixth round picks, and next year's fourth.
Interesting, interesting. Stephon Diggs to the Bills. Don't know how much of an improvement it'll be to the Bills defense, though.
It's I mean when you look at the Bills' defense and the way Sean McDermott and was able to put it together, and then the Bills being able to maximize their talents offensively. I think Brian Dable is one of the best play callers in the NFL. And Josh Allen really took strides, and now he's got a duo of home run targets down the field with John Brown and Stephon Diggs. I think that's going to be a tremendous show, and I think that and these are the types of trades, Tim, that you see from teams that are going all in. That the expectations for this Buffalo Bills team are the highest it's been in about 20-25 years. So there's a lot of excitement, a lot of expectation with the Bills, and Bills fans now with Brady out of New England, they're thinking AFC East crown or bust. That's how serious they're thinking about this in Buffalo.
And I think you could probably say the same thing about that in Miami and in New York.
Yeah, and think about what Miami did. They got Kyle Van Noy from New England, and they got Byron Jones. So you have Byron Jones and Xavier Howard as the opposite corners, and look, we could talk about Miami tanking all the time. The Dolphins are starting to put together a real team, Tim, and they could if they can write things on the offensive line and in the front four. I think Miami could be a team that could be reckoned with in a couple of years. If and when they do wind up with Tua Tagovailoa in the NFL draft.
Yes, I'm sure that every NFL fan is going to have their eyes on that AFC Eastern Division to see where the shift of power is going to go. And it's very interesting that you mentioned the draft because we're planning on having another CTDF fantasy football show sometime after the draft, maybe before the draft. What
Oh,
sounds good?
I don't know if we should do it before the draft or after the draft though. We might as well check in with the rest of the CTDF group and see what we should do about that. Um but we'll see what we're able to do there.
Alrighty, alrighty.
Yeah.
And
Let's see. Going down here, another team that I thought had got better this week, the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns got Austin Hooper, the highest paid tight end in the NFL, on a 4-year, $44 million contract with over $20 million in guarantees. I think that they have as good a tight end combination with Austin Hooper and David Njoku as any in the NFL. They kept all their backs and receivers. And the Browns also beefed up their offensive line by getting Jack Conklin from Tennessee on a 3-year deal that pays $14 million a year. And we can nag Baker Mayfield all we want about his off the field antics and his inability to get things done with Freddie Kitchens. But Freddie Kitchens was a whole another animal. But Baker Mayfield is too talented of a quarterback not to have a second consecutive bad season. That if Baker Mayfield has one more bad season with all these guys, and that's when you start sounding the alarm on Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, let's hope Baker Mayfield can improve there.
And the Browns defense was rather stingy last season. They lost in the shuffle of Freddie Kitchens and Baker Mayfield. Their defense actually played really well last year.
Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty good. So, if I'm not mistaken, your latest episode of Hook on Sports dropped earlier today, right?
Yep. Um, let's see, and there are other teams. So we talked about the Bears and the Texans and being big losers, but I actually have a couple of other teams that I don't think did particularly well in free agency as fans would have hoped. The Detroit Lions and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's our teams that I have as losing teams, and I think but what I saw is that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, their strategy is centered around two main components. Jamie Collins from New England, who goes back to the Lions after being traded from Detroit to New England, and Halapoulivaati Vietai, who came over from the Philadelphia Eagles. But the thing about Vietai is that he was drafted in the fifth round by the Philadelphia Eagles 4 years ago, and he only got 20 starts in 4 games because and those 20 starts came because of injuries. But it's one thing to sign a backup tackle in free agency, but get this, it's another thing, and the Lions actually did this to give him a 5-year, $50 million deal with $20 million in guarantees. That's what the Lions did, and they're pinning their hopes on the future of that offensive line in a backup.
Something just not. Something just does not compute with what I've just heard you said.
Yep, yep. That's the Detroit Lions for you, Tim. Rebuilding since 1957.
1957. Wow, I
Yeah,
wasn't even. I wasn't even glinting my daddy's. Too bad.
yeah, and their quarterback situation is in flux. They signed Chase Daniel, who beat the Lions on Thanksgiving Day at Ford Field last year. If Chase Daniel is the answer, I'd like to know the question. Also, the Lions should absolutely trade Matthew Stafford. At this point, I've been screaming that for the last couple of months. And it's probably going to turn out that he's going to stay with the Lions, and they won't, and his trade value is going to diminish as time goes on. We already talked about Darius Slay going to the Eagles, but I think the Lions did not have a good week in free agency. And another team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jaguars traded Calais Campbell to the Ravens and only got a fifth round pick in return. That they only got a fourth round pick in return for Nick Foles, who signed to an $88 million contract last year. And I think Jacksonville is probably going to do the same if and when they trade Yannick Ngakoue and Ngakoue, who is one of the least talked about high quality pass rushers in the NFL, but partly because he's been on a bad team for so many years, except for that one that played in the AFC Championship game. Where teams that have been linked to him are the Philadelphia Eagles, the Seattle Seahawks. There's an outside shot. The Giants are in there as well. But why are the Jaguars doing this, Tim? I know why, but they won't tell you why. They have no plan. At least they have a lot of picks this. They actually do have 12 picks this year, right? They do have 12.
12 picks.
Yes.
And what to do with them all?
Yeah, and I think and I think the Jaguars are going to be going to have are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And right now, if I was to pick a favorite to win the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes next season, the favorite right now to me is the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah. See,
So,
another team is the Rams. I don't think that did well, but the Rams lost a lot of players in free agency. Whether it's Dante Fowler to Atlanta, Corey Littleton, Brandon Brockers, and a lot of that, but also remember, also don't forget that the Rams parted ways with Wade Phillips, and they gave the defensive coordinator reins to Brandon Staley, who last year was an outside linebackers position coach for the Broncos with Vic Fangio. But but the Rams do have to consider if they'll pay Jalen Ramsey. I think that answer might be more clearer with the release of Todd Gurley. But when you look at the Rams and what the Cardinals did, and by the way, the Cardinals are so much better than they were because of the Hopkins trade. That we haven't talked about Arizona's role in this yet, but with the Cardinals with Kyler Murray and Larry Fitzgerald and DeAndre Hopkins. They're going to draft offensive line help with their first pick this year. And with Seattle, with Russell Wilson, with San Francisco coming off a Super Bowl loss, I place my bets that I think the Rams will finish in the basement in the NFC West this season.
question for you. You mentioned Larry Fitzgerald, old Larry legend. I say he's definitely going into the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
How many? You see? I think I see maybe one or two more good years from Larry Fitzgerald.
I think if Larry Fitzgerald like somehow wins the Super Bowl and Arizona is in my consideration for being one of those Cinderella teams this year, but if the Cardinals do go all the way win a championship, that's gonna be it for Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see a guy like Larry Fitzgerald,
Mm.
a guy who has racked up so many yards, so many accolades, and the one thing I really like about it, he really has done is he's done all of this without much fanfare, without much attention. He's just kind of been quietly doing this whole thing throughout
But
his career.
he's one of those players in sports where it's really hard not to root against him unless you're a divisional rival like San
Right.
Francisco, Seattle.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to root against him. But all the best to Larry Fitzgerald. Like I said, I see maybe one or two more good years,
Mm.
then put him in the
Yeah,
Hall of
and
Fame.
I think Larry Fitzgerald's fantasy stock is going to be a little bit higher because the opposing team's top corner is going to be focused on DeAndre Hopkins and leaving Kyler Murray a lot of opportunity to play with his toys. And since it's just a fantasy football show, normally part of my strategy when drafting is not pick a quarterback with your first five picks, but I think, but we saw some guys do that. I think Kyler Murray might be a top five fantasy quarterback next season because of what he can do on the ground and what he can do through the air. I think a lot of fantasy football champions this season will have Kyler Murray as their starting quarterback.
Well, it definitely sounds very interesting there. Kyler Murray. I say he has a good chance to be on an upside this year. I mean,
Yeah,
he's already he's
I think, and also remember too that with the collective bargaining agreement that was signed to earlier in the week, that there are now 14 playoff teams instead of 12. So that means 7 teams from each conference. Only one team will receive a first round bye from each conference.
yeah, that'll yeah, that's yeah, they decided to agree on that, so expand 14 teams, and it says 17 games in the year.
Yeah, the NFL was originally trying to go for 18 games, but they settled at 17 with the players. But it was clear from the onset that the players had no idea what they were talking about when they were negotiating with the league and the owners, that the NFL owners knew that the players weren't ready to negotiate, and this was about as easy a win and as easy negotiation for the owners as any sport has found in the last several years, in the last 30 to 40 years. So
At least we know that the league will be in operation and the players will be playing for at least the next few years until the
yeah,
next one comes up.
yes. So this is the last year of the current system, but this new deal will go through 2030. So 11 years of labor peace.
Mm. We see how everything goes right there.
Hmm.
So, anything else you want to add to this?
I said all along on Hooked on Sports this was going to be one of the craziest free agent periods in the history of the NFL. It certainly appeared like that, and now you kept that off with an NFL draft that's full of talent at the quarterback position, the wide receiver position, and the offensive line position. I think this year there's about as much offensive talent coming out of college this year as there's ever been in the NFL, and this is good for the NFL. This is good for football, and players need more stars. And I think a lot of them, there's going to be a chunk of them coming out this year.
Yeah, definitely. We are about a month or so, about a month away
Yes,
from the
yes.
draft.
So the draft begins on April 23rd. It's not going to be in Vegas, obviously, because of the impacts of the coronavirus. But the NFL is still maintaining its schedule with the draft. It will still be April 23rd, which is 35 days from today.
Oh, 35 days. We're already counting the days to the draft, y'all.
Hmm.
And it's going to be a very, very interesting draft. So, we'll just see what happens. Like we just said, we may or may not have a draft special for you,
Spoiler
but we'll
alert!
talk.
Spoiler alert! We probably will.
Probably. Well, we'll figure everything out. We're
Yeah,
going to talk
yeah,
to the rest of the gang,
yeah.
and we'll figure something out, and we'll post everything either on our Facebook page or we'll probably put it on YouTube, whatever. But we'll do something like that. Well, John, I want to thank you for helping me sort all this thing out because it's just like a bunch of
Yeah.
information.
Mm.
Thank you once again, my friend.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, be sure Hooked on Sports, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can hear podcasts, look it up. Hooked on Sports, John Flynn, FLYNN. That's how it is. And
Hmm.
we'll be back soon. So for my buddy John Flynn, my name's Tim Clown. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of the CTDF Fantasy Football Show. Just stay safe out there. I know things are crazy. The coronavirus thing is maybe getting a little bit out of whack, but please stay safe. Social distancing. Keep washing your hands and just take care of yourselves. Take care of your family. Take care of your friends. Till next time, I'm Tim McClellan. Remember, be a good sport. See ya.
See ya.